get my 6. What's up, everybody? Good morning. I usually come to you in the evenings or late afternoons, but I'm just gonna record a few minutes worth of footage here before I start my chore here that I'm doing this morning. I'm in the fruit orchard and it's in the front part of our property, so you'll have to be forgiving of any automobile traffic you hear. It's early, it's like 7:45, and the folks that live out here who go into town to work are on their way into town, and so that's why you're going to hear far more traffic than usual. Not because, like the vertically challenged individuals who live under bridges say, I live beside a freeway interstate. That's not the case. There's no freeway around here, brah. There's a beautiful fruit orchard here that leads up to our pond, which would lead, of course, leads on into the forest there in the fields. I'm going to go around and weed. I'm going to take these tree guards. Somebody asked in a recent video how we keep the deer and everything from eating our trees and our fruit. Well, when they're young, you have to put up, we use 2-inch by 4-inch stainless steel wire up to 48 inches tall. After the tree's mature enough, you can take these off. We've gone around taking off a lot of the tree guards. But it's no secret, as of this recording, this is the day after yet another senseless tragedy. It's terrible. I want to talk to you about how we talk to our son, who is 11 years old and in 5th grade, in grade school, elementary school, about the events. Our son went to school this morning and he's perfectly fine and he's perfectly aware. He's aware of what happened yesterday. He thinks it's terrible. He thinks it's tragic because it is. And his heart goes out, like mine and my wife, his mother, like everybody, goes out to those folks affected by that. But the point I want to make is that my son had absolutely no fear to go to school today. Here's why. We basically have a belief system that is this, and our son he's fully on board with this, and I'm going to give you an example about how he's recently used it in his life. And this allows you to be able to go out into a crazy world filled with crazy people who do crazy things and live the life you want to live free of fear, knowing at any given moment it could happen to you, yet having the courage to go out there and live your life despite that not so pleasant fact. And here's this belief system. And I didn't come up with this. I didn't make it up. I got it out of a book written by like a spiritualist, a life coach named Eckhart Tolle, a Canadian guy, author. And a lot of folks have heard this said in different ways, multiple forms, but it pretty much is the same thing. And it's this. When you have a situation in life that's not pleasant, there are 3 things you can do about that unpleasant situation, okay? And it's got to be in this order. Please pay very close attention and take notes even. Okay, you can change a situation. If you're in a situation or there's a situation going on around you that you're uncomfortable with, change it if it can be changed. Now, as you know, you're saying, well, what if you can't? Well, that's true. If you can't change it, for instance, we can't change the fact that there are complete lunatics out there who do acts of lunacy. We can't change that. So, second thing, let's say if you can't change the situation you're in that you're not comfortable with, well, remove yourself from the situation. If maybe it's a work environment, maybe it's a relationship with a friend or a family member or just an acquaintance, somebody you don't have to have a relationship with, that you don't mind to have a relationship with, but every time they come around or you get around them, you always end up feeling worse after you've spent time with that person than you felt before you spent time with that person. Remove yourself from the situation, okay? You can't change it. You can't change that person. Remove yourself from the situation. Well, what if you can't do that? What if, maybe it's a coworker, you can't stand the B words, you can't quit your job, you can't get transferred to another department, and why should you request a transfer anyway when they're the one that's kind of the problem? Well, thirdly, And as uncomfortable as this is, and this is key to what happened here just yesterday as of this recording, you've got to accept it. You have to accept it. If you can't change it and you can't remove yourself from the situation, as unpleasant as the situation might be, you must accept it. Does it mean we have to like that we live in a world where these things happen? Absolutely not. And if you like that, I would question just your entire mindset. But if you do not accept the fact that we live in a world where these situations happen and where these things take place, it'll drive you insane, and you will become the one who will be the next lunatic. All right. You did not just experience a glitch in the matrix. Sorry to stray from what I was talking about there. We had some work trucks come through building one of the mansions up the road here. So I stopped. I actually went through and took some guards off and cut the weeds down away from some of the trees here. Used my time wisely. You know, and this thing I'm doing here with these trees, is it necessary? No. It's something I want to do because it's more beautiful. It'll allow the trees not to have to compete against the weeds for sunlight and water. And this talk we're having today is a big reason why I'm doing this. I'm going to get to that. If we look back at the tragedy of 9/11, terrible, terrible tragedy. And I was one of the people who just needed to go talk to somebody. And that's always great advice. If something has happened that has affected you and you're not feeling well mentally or emotionally, there's unlimited resources out there. Free resources. Get on your internet, get on your phone and Google it. You'll find it. You don't have to say, oh, but we don't have health insurance, or, oh, but mental health care costs are so high. Hey, if you need it, you can get it today for free. Google it. That's the truth. Don't make excuses, okay? So 9/11, September 11th, I really had a hard time. And there was all that talk afterward about the dirty bombs. I didn't want to accept the fact that we lived in a world where nutcases will hijack planes and fly them into buildings and kill thousands of innocent people. That's as hard to accept as the fact that there are mentally ill lunatics out there that have access to weapons that can, that allows them to go into a school and do what happened yesterday. I don't want to accept that. And this is going to sound callous to say it, and I in no way mean to coming across as callous, because I'm not. I don't have to like the fact that we live in a world where these things happen. I do not like that fact at all. I will never like the fact that we live in a world where these things happen. And as hard as it is to do, I accept the fact that we do live in a world where these things happen. If we don't accept that which we can't change, that which we cannot remove ourselves from, our last option is acceptance. And if we can't come to that, we become the lunatic. Because what's our options? Well, there's one. It's to live our entire life in fear. And friends, that's not living, that's existing at best. Because all we're doing then is sitting around, isolating by ourselves, hiding in our homes, waiting to die of old age. That's literally the only option we have. After 9/11, there were a lot of folks who were so terrified of this potential dirty bomb that the mainstream media kept talking about. Oh, you thought them knocking down our buildings were bad. Wait till they hit us with the dirty bombs. They're out there. There were people who were so scared, they went out and they bought plastic and vinyl sheeting that you put up around your windows in the winter if you have a draft, and they enclosed their entire houses or their apartments or their mobile homes, townhouses, condos, whatever they were living in, put that up all over the windows and the doors to protect themselves from this dirty bomb that they were living in fear of. There are people who did that who died. They died in their sleep due to the carbon monoxide, or They didn't, the dirty bomb, and it never happened. It never happened. It could have, and it still could, because as much as I don't like it, I accept the fact that we live in a world where there are lunatics who do these things. But those people who died in their homes after they sealed them up died from fear. Fear. They died from fear. Our family refuses to live that way. So I had this talk with my son, and his wife had this talk as well. We talked about it this morning before we went to school. And again, he thinks it's terrible. He thinks it's tragic. His heart, our hearts go out to everybody affected. But he got right on that bus this morning. And while I had the phone off because of the work trucks coming through, and I was taking down some of the weeds. There was a good one. That thing, you couldn't even see it almost. It was covered with weeds. I was happy to see the middle school bus go by and a middle school child get on that bus. I was happy to see that bus driver. And I was happy to see the other kids on the bus. And I know teachers are going to school today. I am so proud of the brave people who will go out there today and continue to live their lives despite the nasty things that happen without fear. Maybe a little bit of fear, but they're bucking up and going out there and living them anyway. They're not hiding in their houses, isolating, becoming agoraphobes because they're scared of the world we live in. If you can't change a situation and you can't remove yourself from the situation, you must accept the situation, or you are the one who will become the lunatic. Now, I'm not saying you're going to go out there and carry out one of these mass shootings or fly a plane through a building. What I'm going to say is you will literally just go insane in your mind. You will focus on all the negative things in the world, everything that's bad, and that's all you'll see. And despite the fact that there are lunatics out there that do these crazy things, most people are good. The world is a beautiful place. I look forward every day to jumping out of bed and getting to spend my day with my wife and my son and the things we're doing, whether they're necessary or not. There are so many things I could say right now, but because of this platform, I do have a velvet muzzle on my mouth, and that's unfortunate. Some of them don't need to be said, and so that doesn't affect me so much. I'm going to use an example. Almost a year ago, I actually wrote a book called The Lunatic. And many of you read that book. You find out the true lunatic in the book was the character that you suspected least to be the lunatic. And I hate to throw that spoiler out there for people who haven't read it yet. I've gotten so much feedback on that and how it's changed people's lives and how it allowed them to step out of the artificial life they were living because they were afraid of people seeing them for who they truly were, and they've never felt more free. I'm telling you, the only way to be free, to truly live the life that's meant for you, despite living in a world where these tragedies happen, is to accept these tragedies, refuse to live in fear, and get out there and live your life according to who you are and what you want to do, despite the insanity of the world around us. Because to cower in fear and to not go out there and live, that's not living. You're just sitting around waiting to die. And you're letting the terrorists win. You're letting the mass murderers win. Because what these lunatics desire, their most evil desire at the pit of their core, is to instill fear. That's why it's called terrorism. They want to terrorize. If they scare you so much, you're afraid to go out there and live your life and do the things that make you happy, do the things you enjoy with the people that make you happy, they've won. Even if they died in the plane themselves flying it through the building, even if they were terminated while they were carrying out their mass heinous act of hate and insanity, even though they perished in that, if you're afraid to go out there and live your life the next day, or sadly, as is the case in the book The Lunatic, and sadly that book is tightly based upon a real person we know who lives every single day in fear of everything, that's no way to live. So, and my son, with this 3-thing rule, we encourage him to implement it. I'm going to use an example of how he did that recently. It was with a friend of his who I guess was getting on his nerves. Okay, he was participating in some behaviors that was making my son uncomfortable. He was harassing my son. And so he comes home and he tells us about it, and he says, I want you to contact my teacher. And the kid wasn't bullying him. He was just being annoying. He was doing certain things to annoy him. Well, we told him, we said, Daniel, we can't always just jump to your aid and go to your teacher, go to some authority figure every time you're having a problem with somebody. And we certainly don't want to get in the habit of doing it when it's somebody that's a friend of yours. So let's go back to our 3 things, okay? You don't like the behavior. Can you change it? And he says, well, no, because it's him. Okay. Can you remove yourself from the situation? He goes, well, no, because he's a classmate and we're always so close together, so I can't. And I said, okay, are you willing to accept it? And he said, no, because I don't want to be treated this way. I said, okay, now you have a right for that right there. So let's talk about how you're being treated. And so he just gave us some of the details. And we know this kid, great kid. We know his parents, wonderful people. But we know a little bit about their situation. And without telling our son stuff that's none of his business, we just let him know that, maybe your friend is having some issues at home. Maybe he's having some issues with his family. Maybe he's not happy because there's something going on in his life that's uncomfortable and it's just coming out sideways. And since he's 11, he doesn't really know how to communicate that. Maybe you might want to go to your friend, not us or not your teacher, and just say, hey, is there something going on in your life that you need to talk about? Because if there is, you can talk to me about it, because that's what friends are for. And our son said, okay, we'll go that route. And he did. And the kid, no, I don't know. He did. If there was something there he wanted to talk about, he didn't feel comfortable doing it, or maybe he didn't know how, so he didn't. So the behaviors continued. So our son, he tried to change the situation. He tried by talking to the guy and saying, hey, look, you're kind of acting out. Just tell me what's going on and I'll see if I can help. Well, the guy refuses help, okay? Our son can't he can't handle that, or he has no say in that because that was the other guy's choice, okay? So again, he couldn't remove himself from the situation. So at that point, he went and he talked to the teacher and he said, look, this is what's been going on. And the teacher took care of it. She just moved some seats around to eliminate the problem. But I was so proud of my son to be able to see that he handled that. He handled it on his own. He came to us for help, which we want him to do. And we tell him, you got a problem, you come to us. You're grown up. It's 2:00 in the morning and you've been out drinking with your friends and everybody's drunk. No one can drive. Call me, or you can get an Uber, you can get a cab, but call me. I'll call the Uber. I'll call the cab if I don't want to come down, or I will come down. I might give you some gruff about it the next day, but I want you to know you always have me as an option, but he used those 3 steps to resolve his situation. And so he's been implementing that life skill in his life. And so he now sees that despite the tragedy that happened yesterday, he knows that if he becomes scared, doesn't want to go to school, wants us to pull him out and homeschool him. And I'm not against homeschooling. I personally don't have the discipline or the desire to do that, or I would, mostly because of the inefficient use of time throughout the school day. Have a business mindset, understand the value of time. I know you could effectively teach 2.5 hours of coursework in 2.5 hours, not in the 8 hours it takes to obey and conform. Get in this line, go in that line, raise your hand. When I raise my pinky, you put your finger on your nose and make sure to be quiet. Whatever, okay? But we go along to get along. But we could pull him out and homeschool him, and he could get bit by a rattlesnake up here one day in the garden and expire before we had time to get him to. When it's your time, it's your time. You can't live in fear, worrying about if this is the day. So I'm not doing it myself. My son gave me a good example by getting on that bus and going to school today, the day after these things happened. I've been sitting on my front porch, looking down in this fruit orchard, looking at all the fruit on the trees, saying, it's absolutely beautiful. How much more beautiful would it be if I came down here and cut these weeds out? Then the lazy part of me, and part of somebody else who got in my head once, a guy that used to come around who's lazy, doesn't work, trees fall in his yard, he leaves them there. It looks like a cyclone came through. He would say, all that work you do isn't really necessary. Is that really necessary? And I said, yeah. Sometimes that still gets in my head. And I say, well, that's not really necessary. Do I enjoy it? Yeah. Would it make my yard look more pleasing to me the way I want it to look? Some people don't care if it looks like they live in a shithole. Some people just don't care. I care, you know? So I'm getting out here and doing it because I want to do it. I'm not hurting anybody else. And if I let anybody else in any way get in my head and cause me to live differently than I want to live, I'm the one becoming the lunatic, not the lunatic. They win, I lose. So because of my son and his courage to go to school today, because of all the other kids, the bus drivers, the teachers, everybody else who's going to continue to live their life today and who refuses to live in fear, I'm going to make this the prettiest fruit orchard in the county. So I hope I said something in there that can help somebody maybe get past this. Listen, live your life. Live the life you want to live. People who mind don't matter. And the people that do matter, they will never mind. See you for more next time.